Welcome everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here with Aimée. So Aimée and I have worked together a couple of times before, and I absolutely love her approach to Substack. So I've invited her in to do a really special workshop with you, which we've talked about in terms of content planning, but it's actually much more than that. It's about drawing inspiration, using different hooks and ways into your own work and your own world on Substack. The idea is that we'll help you with some decision making. We'll help you hold your content calendar if you've got one gently, make some space for inspiration, and maybe just give you some things, some visual surprises and some things that you haven't thought about in terms of strategy and technique. So if you're new to my space, I'm Claire Venus. I'm an engagement consultant and mentor, and I absolutely love Substack. Still, after sort of 2.5 years of being on the platform, I'm 100% in and absolutely adore teaching people how to stay creative and grow joyfully and sustainably. So I'm now looking at how I can bring in others who I really admire in the Substack space. Aimée is one of those. She's got a brilliant skill set that I'm really excited to share with you today. So we're going to have a bit of a kind of pre-workshop chat to give you some inspiration and just to find out a little bit more about Aimée's journey, because it's a fascinating one. Welcome, Aimée.
Hi, thanks, Claire. So lovely to be back. I always love coming and talking to all your lovely members. And yes, so I am Aimée. I am a copywriter and I work with lots of different kinds of brands, helping them find their voice. Do a lot of tone of voice work, helping them write website copy, all sorts. And I've been on Substack for nearly in January. I really started taking it seriously, as I always had wanted like a newsletter and I always wanted to build an email list, but it just all felt very markety and salesy. And did I need a lead magnet and all of these kind of things that come with growing an email list? But Substack, I just fell in love with the platform because you're almost like the golden age of blogging again. You can make it beautiful and you could write what you want, and there was a lot of visibility in the platform and a lot of like community, really natural community and engagement. And Substack's kind of like your calling card because people can recommend you. And yeah, it really resonated with me as a platform. My publication is called Flourish and Fair. And it's just about my life in the Cotswolds, all the things that I get up to, lots of seasonal inspiration, recipes, days out that I have here. And what I love about it is it's like my happy space. I've got my copywriting business and I get a lot of clients that, come to me for copy, but here is I can just write what I want. And
Mhm.
I love that. And there's no rules. So yes, I am a big Substack advocate.
And it's been so beautiful to watch what you've done with your space. So when we first connected, I know you were busy working on your about page and I'd booked you to do an about page
Yeah.
workshop for my members and you were like, right, well, I'm working on it. I mean, it's not like you couldn't do it, but it's like a big job, isn't it? Kind of coming to it and being like, okay, like what is this page going to be about? And I say to my members, don't be afraid to go in like every 2 to 3 months and check, is this still you? Does this sound like you? And I think as we are writing more and more words on the platform, we start to recognize, actually, I've got an interest here and I've maybe boxed myself in over here. So how am I going to kind of free myself from this imaginary cage and spend more time with this topic or within this kind of content bucket or within this sort of space? And I feel like there's a real freedom that we have on Substack that we maybe just have that hangover from social media that feels like maybe we can't do some of the things that we want to do. And we absolutely can. And I've definitely seen you grow more into your voice on your Substack. Like last night's piece was just absolutely glorious. Like I absolutely adored it. I just felt like the design, the photographs, the fact that I felt like I was with you on those, like not in a weird stalkery way, just like I just felt so transported to your world. And I just thought it was really, really expertly done. And it's not like you haven't had that in the past, but I just felt more of that. I guess I've got to know you over a little bit of time and you have kind of worked out exactly what it is that you want to show us about that world. And that can sometimes be in response to what people like, right? Like if people are really into something that you've written about and you get those comments or you get some shares in notes, that can be a really rewarding place to be like, oh, people are actually really interested when I talk about this particular element, apples in baskets or national
Yeah.
trust trips, whatever it is. So I feel like there's something really on fire about what you're doing at the minute, Aimée. I really love it.
And I think it's so important about constantly rethinking and revisiting your why. Like my publication is very much set here in the Cotswolds because it's the place that I feel at home. But it's that sense of like belonging and connection to a place. That's my why. And like inviting people to feel connected to that place wherever it might be. So now I feel like I could write about London, like I could write about anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the Cotswolds because my why is all about like connection and belonging.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
whenever you get super clear on what your why is, you're not boxed in, you can flex and explore and go down different routes. So I always think it's important to coming back to what is the purpose of your publication.
Yeah, and it can feel a big question, but it's actually in a really gentle way, a nice way to just reconnect, and just kind of ground in and be like, why am I here? Why am I being called to write? Like, not in terms of the 5-year goal stuff, just in terms of what is calling me to show up to write. What is my voice asking of me? What is this space asking of me? And kind of put some words on the page. And when we do put the words on the page, sometimes a little format emerges. So we were just chatting before we recorded about your could-do list. So this really beautiful and sometimes whimsical, I find it quite whimsical to read. It's a could-do list, not like a should-do list or a might-do list. It's like, these are things that I could do. And some of them you might end up doing, and others are just more in that space of imagination in terms of if you had time to do them, and that's really beautiful. I wonder if you could tell me more about where that came from and like how you felt driven to write that list, and do you still feel driven to write it after a few times of putting that out there? Is it a monthly thing?
Yeah, so I do it monthly, and all credit is to my favorite magazine, The Simple Things. I love this magazine. It's like a slow living, very inspirational, whimsical publication. And they always have a could-do list at the beginning, and it's just 5 things. And I loved that idea of like a could-do list. And I thought, okay, so instead of having 5 things, what about if we do like 30 or 31 things for the month? And a lot of it is just stuff that I want to do. I just love thinking, okay, what is in season right now? What should I be doing in October? What should I be eating? Is there anything lovely going on in my area or any nice traditions? So I love like collating those. And I think, that's my most of my subscribers come from these could-do lists. Many people resonated with it because it's, it's a permission slip. You can do this, and here's some inspiration. Not like if you're a slow liver, you have to be baking sourdough bread. So I collate these long lists, and then I try and show up on my notes, several times a month. So if I've talked about like going scrumping in an orchard, on my notes I like, just talk about the orchard, share photos, share anecdotes from the day, and then link back to the post. So it's keeping it alive for longer. And I'm kind of telling this, finding the stories within the story. And I went to a fireworks display at the weekend, and I thought, oh, I want to be writing about fireworks for like November's to-do list. And I thought, oh, like I wonder what the history of fireworks are, and those like little stories that emerge. And I think having this as my kind of hero post of the month, these could-do lists, stories kind of emerge from them as the month goes on. And I've got lots of possibilities of things I could talk about, but yet one kind of post that I know goes out every month.
And it's like that thing to kind of hook your hat on, isn't it? So, okay, like here are all the little hooks. I'm going to hook my hat here, wear the hat, go to a firework display. And then for you as a writer, that's quite an inspiring place, because it goes from a could do item into I've actually embodied this experience, whether you've been with your son or whatever's happened, like, there's a story within it, isn't there? I know for us, there are just fireworks going off in the village all the time. So it's like, oh, there they are. But our wedding anniversary is bonfire night. So for us, like, there's a beautiful story. So in response to reading that in your November could-do list, like, I would feel very compelled to like tell you that story and say, oh, and then that might ripple effect on, and I might think, oh, I might actually talk a little bit about what it's been like being married for 5 years, and have those kind of fireworks that remind us every year if we forget. So there's lots of ripple effects that can happen, and I feel like within your work there is something quite strategic about that invite. You know, you're reminding people, I'm here in the Cotswolds at home. Here's my could-do list. Here it is again on notes. Here are some images to accompany it. So that one piece of content can work quite hard for you across the month. Is that fair to say?
Yes, definitely. It works hard for me across the month. So even if I have no inspiration of like any other long form posts, I'll always have that to go back to. And it could even be I could even be out for a morning walk and I will like have I wrote in my September could-do list about, blackberrying. And I was walking past like a lovely hedgerow full of blackberries, and some memories came up of when I was a child going blackberrying. And it was a very personal memory. So I did an audio recording.
Nice.
And it's just all these like little links with each other. And I found telling these kind of stories elicit stories from other people. I wrote something about growing up in Ireland. We didn't carve pumpkins because they were too American. We carved turnips. And
Same, yeah.
Lots of people were like, oh, I carved turnips or something else. And people share their stories, and it becomes sort of like a patchwork of just patchwork of memory. And so it keeps growing, and it's lovely. I really love
and it's that key relatability piece, isn't it? So it's like, oh, that sparkly thing in me recognizes that sparkly thing in you, and actually like we have that connection now. And forming connections on the internet can be the most magical thing, but also if those connections land somewhere with us, we're going to have not only somebody who wants to press the subscribe button rather than the follow button, but somebody who is invested in, they might pop back through our archives. They might be really excited to receive that next post. There's an identity in connecting at that level. When you talked about that blackberrying post, I remembered it. Like I remember that post, not only because you're a brilliant writer, but because it evoked memory in me and it evoked connection. And it's like, oh yeah, Aimée and I are both in the UK. Like we are both people that spot blackberries and go, let's freeze some of those for like February, to make a crumble or whatever. Like that is an affinity, a connection. And so there's something really special about understanding what your unique connection might be. As you sitting listening to us today, what is that connection? What is that through line that pops up in your work? And if you don't know it yet, we want to help you kind of anchor some of that and to try and kind of tune into something that is uniquely you, but that other people will recognize and find a connection with. So within the workshop, we've got a few different ways in that we have been kind of pondering on and working with. And Aimée really likes the idea of a word of the month or a word of the season. I use that in my work as well. So my word of the year for 2024 was bright. And it's been really, really interesting to have that word because it's been quite a shadowy year. There's been a lot gone on this year that exists in the shadows. And it's reminded me that I don't have to live in that place in my writing. I can do, if I want to write that kind of more personal memoir type stuff, but I can also just keep that in my journal and actually have a version of myself online that is very bright and sparkly. And all of that is kind of, kept in another place. So as we're going through hard times, sometimes these words were like, oh, well, that was magic. It was magic that I set that word. And then I felt this way in relation to it. And so not only that can it be an anchor, but it can also be a jumping off point for lots of storytelling ways in with content and stuff. I wonder if you want to reflect on any of that kind of word of the month, word of the year stuff for you, Aimée, and how it's kind of influenced your personal practice away from your copywriting business.
Yeah, so I'll start with the copywriting. So in copywriting, everything is the word strategy, content strategy, campaign strategy. And as like a soulful creative, strategy just sounds like, what does that mean? Like even when I put on like my creative hat as opposed to my kind of, copywriting business hat, I'm like, what does that mean? And what will strategy mean for something as beautiful as Substack? So I think like it's a scary word and it puts us off. So I really like having sort of a very gentle, intuitive framework for Substack. And it's getting away from strategy, and it's all like tapping into what feels good to write and what will feel good for your readers to read, what they want to read, you think they'll love, and what you'll love to write. And so for me then, getting away from like objectives and blah, I like to think of a word, as Claire said, for a word for the season or a word for the month. Now, I did this back in June. My word for that month was joyful June. And so every day I tried to show up in notes with something that had sparked joy that day. And every month I shared a different thing. And that phrase sort of give me then ideas for like long form posts, ideas for some video content I could put out, but it was all guided around what was bringing me joy. July was like I turned 30, so it was jubilant July because there was a lot of celebrating. So again, just celebrating all of life's wonderful little moments, little wins, like how far I've come, etc. So kind of having that, as where the content and the strategy comes from, just made it really natural. And I'm also quite a visual person, so I was going onto Canva and Pinterest and making little collages of how I wanted the month to feel. And I know that's quite popular on Substack notes at the moment. I've seen a lot of people curating little mood boards.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's so
I
nice
think
to see.
yeah, which is just sets the
Mhm.
mood or the theme.
Mhm.
So I think
If I
it's
could only see that, I feel like that would just be my best case scenario.
yeah,
You know, just
no,
show me all the textures, all the colors, all the visuals. I feel like now we're being asked to process quite a lot on notes. And I know for me, I've moved away from being there because I just find it too much to process. So in terms of my own way of being and sharing within that network, because it is a great network, you know, to be able to grow, I am just a little bit more mindful of like, oh, that just feels like being in a busy shopping center now. And actually,
yeah,
I just want to look at the beautiful textures. So how
yeah.
do I find that and go back to reading in my inbox again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe if you are a wordy person, which I guess you are if you're on Substack, but if words feel right for you, maybe you start with the word. Maybe if you're a more visual person, you start with the pictures or
Mm-hmm.
music if you're an
Mm-hmm.
auditory person.
Nice.
And you're kind of picking words from there. Um, yeah, a lot of these, like the Simple Things magazine that I spoke about earlier, they always have a theme, and all magazines do. They've got a theme for the month. So it's kind of like looking to lots of um, other things for some inspiration if you kind of it doesn't come
Yeah.
naturally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
that sounds really good. And so our invitation back to you, as you've been listening into us here, is we want to hold you in this gentle content planning workshop. And we've called it content planning simply because people understand what that means. But like Aimée says, there's much more soul behind it. And what we're trying to do is take out some of the decision making and get you closer to your kind of true north, your North Star in it all. So if you're inspired by audio, if you're inspired by a word or something that just really kind of resonates for you right now, or if there's something quite visual that you want to make in Pinterest or in Canva, then connect to that ahead of the workshop and we can hook some of the ideas and some of the exercises in a bit better for you. I think just coming to it with that sense of if you were to make a notebook and this was your notebook of your Substack, right? And we're starting with the idea that Substack is our online home, right? So that's what I talk about a lot. It's like we're here, it's our online home, everything else can be fed by Substack, but this is the place. You know, what is the cover of that notebook like? What does the cover say? Like, do you have your name there? Do you have a word there? Do you have an invitation, a provocation, an affirmation? Like, what is that front cover? And then inside the workshop really is then going to be, you know, this kind of map where you can kind of map through, okay, you've had this time with us, but this is going to give you the tools to kind of lean
Mhm.
back in and gently plan as you go forward further into your Substack journey and give you that kind of confidence as the anchor that Aimée's been talking about in terms of how you want to hook something around the big story that you have, like that why, the purpose and the why, and then the stories that surround that. So yeah, I feel like with that, it just gives us that little bit of something to hold rather than Substack to see, because it's just so huge now, you know. So if we hold this notebook version of our Substack and we can kind of put some things in there that make sense to us for the way that we want to show up and the way that we want to write, if there's audio there, if there's video there, if we're using notes, you know, we can hold all of that within this notebook. So we want to help you do that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And we will be using, you know, some of those marketing strategies, content planning strategies that I use for my day job, but we're going to be translating them to a really gentle, soulful way to do
Mhm.
that. We'll be looking at sort of which stories, so which medium. So we'll be looking at things that work really well in audio or video or notes or long form, or and just kind of helping you sort of categorize different ways of storytelling.
Mhm, mhm. And all bringing it back to that kind of joyful, sustainable growth. You know, if you see yourself like I have been on Substack for like, you know, I talk about the 10-year plan, but it's been a quarter of that for me now, right? So like I've been on the platform 2.5 years. It's mind blowing, but that's the time that's gone by. And in that time, I've shown up every single week, every single month, and I've adjusted what I'm there to do and made space for new ways of being, new challenges, new invitations to my memberships. I've kind of cut things out, I've cut things down, I've remounted things from the past. There's been all sorts going on. But I feel like right now there are so many people, you know, a little bit scared of burning out because the platform asks a lot of us. And then we are visible, a lot of us, in other places online as well. So with the gentle approach that Aimée and I have, like we know, you know, we get it, like we're on the internet too, and the internet can just feel a lot. And so by having this space just for you where you feel like you know exactly what you're here to do, it's going to help you show up more consistently, which is obviously really important. And I don't mean, you know, show up every day, show up every week. I just mean show up in a way that feels good to you in the season that you're in. So I'll have a 3-month portion of my year that is focused on growing free subscribers. And then I'll be leading towards a launch where I'm trying to convert to paid. And that's something that I really enjoy doing. And it makes sense to me to do that. So, you know, people wouldn't necessarily know that that's what I'm doing, but that's what's going on. It's all strategic behind the scenes. But within that, you know, I do give myself permission to just go, oh, you know what, like that's it. I'm not doing any more this week. Like I've done enough. Something's been busy or something's been hard. And I think that we can do that with ourselves. You know, we don't owe Substack absolutely everything. We can show up in a way that feels more gentle. And so I want to, with Aimée's support as well, just lean into a couple of the ways that I've helped to support clients without getting them into that hamster treadmill. So the ways that it feels easy to create and easeful to create within a content system that you set up for yourself, where you can take some time off or you can just take a bit less time to put something out and it's still as valuable and well received with your audience. So we'll go into some of that in the workshop as well. But yeah, it's been so nice to speak to Aimée. I'm really enjoying bringing her into the membership and having you guys get to know her approach, which is obviously a really unique approach to Substack. But I really encourage you to pop over and read our work because there's an identity there that you can see building up over time. And I think that you'll understand a bit more about why I'm so passionate about bringing Aimée in to kind of share some of her expertise with you. So thank you, Aimée. Thank you
Thank
for being
you.
here and thank you for sharing all that. And we're just really
Yeah.
excited for you to come along
Yeah.
to the workshop.
Can't
So
wait.
we'll see you
Can't wait to
there.
see everyone. Thank you, Claire.
See you soon.